you build it, it will come. Ray Liotta, R.I.P.
Hello, this is the QUACKCAST. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Baines and Tant Serene. This week we're talking about adaptation. This is QUACKCAST number 585. Right, did 550 a long time ago. So this is the adaptation, not about the movie Adaptation, which I don't think any of us have seen.
I have several times. It's one of my faves.
Damn it, Baines!
It's a great movie.
Well, we can talk about that as well. So a movie about an adaptation.
Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. Adapting things into other things. Not just like movie adaptations, but, you know, movie adaptations are great because everyone's seen them, so everyone can relate. But
adaptations, movie adaptations.
Adaptations, yes. Yes, adaptation, that's something that's part of evolution, so different context. Okay, so we'll have to mention the featured comic. Featured comic this week was Amy Armageddon. So take it away, no, not Gunwallace. Take it away, Ozone Ocean. Take it away, me, talking about Amy Armageddon. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Amy Armageddon. Wild, rough-talking, hard-ass Amy Geddon works as a bounty hunter in a frontier town. She takes crap from no one, and it's almost impossible to get the drop on her. Many have tried, few have succeeded. Till now, her blabbermouth friend, Gertie Brown, leads her into a bit of trouble, starting a whole cascade of problems, gunfights, quick humor, and triple crossing in this action-packed story. Armageddon is a dieselpunk, sci-fi, action, western comic. The writing is full of action, gunslinging, humor, and insults. The art is drawn with pencil and ink and edited digitally in tones of grey that gives it an old-timey photograph feel, with a very original art style. For those that don't know, the dieselpunk genre are sci-fi stories where the main technology centers around the internal combustion engine, so roughly limited to the period of the 1910s to the 1940s technology. So yeah, this is Armageddon. Good, entertaining comic, fast-talking, quipping one-liner kind of characters, and lots of action and shooting and gunslinging kind of stuff. It's really cool. This is a comic by Machine Head Studio, and it's rated T for teen. So have a look at Amy Armageddon. That was the featured comic, Amy Armageddon. Alright, and guess what the featured music is? Gunwallace gave us a theme to Amy Armageddon. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, this guy is good with the synchronicity. So this is an adaptation of Amy Armageddon into music, which is what Gunwallace does best. He is the Waters. I don't know, the guy who does the music for Star Wars. That's who he is for us. That guy. Basil Polidorus. No. Whoever the guy who does the music for Star Wars, I can't remember his name. The soundtrack guy, exactly. So this music this week, it's hard to describe this one. It sounds like a great pop song, really. You'd hear on the radio this kind of music, or as a theme song to a big budget movie. Echoing tonal vocals, evocative layered sounds. It sets a scene and then expands upon it. Just a really lovely piece of electronica. So take it away, Gunwallace, with your theme to Amy Armageddon. was our featured music. Thank you very much for that, Gamal. It's a theme to Amy Armageddon, which is a comic by Machine Head Studio, I think. I'll just give that a little bit of a check. Machine Head Studio. Yeah, rated T. Have a look. All right, then. I would have said that in the bloody feature text anyway. Damn it, I record their stuff later, so who knows what I say about it. All right, so
Tell them you're going to tell them.
What?
Tell them you told them.
Adaptations. So this is stuff that happens on many different levels, like adapting comic scripts into comics, or stories into comics. We do this all the time. I adapt Baines' script into Bottomless Waitress. That's the best comic making experience that I've ever had. It's just so simple, and it's so cool, and the writing's so good and funny, and it's like super pleasurable. Versus Pinky TA, which is painful. So it's a good experience.
It's painful to you, right? We
Yes.
actually enjoy.
Not to your absolutely.
Oh, thank you. It's just that I wish I had a writer for Pinky TA, so then it would be a lot easier. So yeah, I need to contract someone to adapt my thoughts and into a script, and then I can adapt it into a comic.
Yes, it's a treat for me too. It's definitely, as an experience, it probably stands above, because like for the same reason in reverse, it's like you kind of send it off to Oz, and you get these amazing visuals back, and
yeah,
it just seems very easy. It's stress-free collaboration, and it's great.
Yeah, it's a good experience, but adaptations can be very tricky when you're adapting something into an alien mode that it doesn't easily fit into. So your scripts are deliberately designed to be comics, which makes it a lot more simple. But when you're adapting prose into a comic, you have to cut out so much and change things. It's quite a challenge. And
Bottomless Waitress was originally written to be a line of running shoes. So it is an adaptation, but the shoes didn't work out.
They didn't go anywhere.
No, if you got a pair, they're worth a fortune. So good on you.
Actually, people do that kind of crap. You have things adapted into forms that are just like, you can have a script or a movie, like a book, adapted into a video game. This happens. You can have it adapted. Take War of the Worlds, for example. Now, War of the Worlds has been a bunch of video games. It's been radio plays. It's been terrible movies of all different shapes and sizes. Plays on stages. An excellent, probably the best adaptation from my point of view is the I think it's Jeff Wayne's musical. That's the he did this 3 CD or 3 record musical thing back in the 80s, or maybe the late 70s, of War of the Worlds, and it is really, really cool. It's narrated by Richard Burton, I think, and there's a whole lot of famous musicians, the guys from Moody Blues singing, David Essex, all kinds of people. It is really, really awesome, and I think it's generally acknowledged as one of the best versions of War of the Worlds. But one of the things about War of the Worlds is every time it's adapted, people change it to update it for some reason, and that's something they feel they have to do. I don't know why. I don't like it myself, but every single version you see, like at least TV versions, or movie versions, are always updated to whatever present day. I think what was his name? Not H.G. Wells wrote it. Orson Welles, he did the radio play. Relation. So that radio play is basically set in America in the 1950s, when it was actually broadcast. So
it was meant to be, this is happening right now, and these are radio broadcasts, which is still a thing, right? We still have radio.
Yes, we do.
They adapt it. Yeah, that's a good question.
Not as popular anymore, but it's there. So yeah, that was done as a radio thing, and that was a fine creative choice of adapting it into another thing, because you're saying, this is happening, right? This is a this is a news broadcast. This is really happening. So that was a very clever thing to do. But it's updating the story. Then they have these movie versions, I think, of the 1960s. So it's the idea is the aliens are like a proxy for the Soviets invading. That's the kind of the way they did it there. And there's been other things. I think there was a Tom Cruise version, and that it's always modernized in different ways. But I think it would be really interesting to see an adaptation of War of the Worlds set in the 19th century, and all the steampunk technology and all that kind of stuff, versus aliens at this stage in our present day. That would be really cool, because we've got all high technology and stuff like that. We know there's no aliens on Mars, all that kind of stuff. So just take it back to fantasy. Get rid of pretending it's real and updating it. Just go whole hog with the 19th century stuff. Do that kind of adaptation. Anyway, so that's off the topic of the problems of adaptation and talking about my own preferences, but it's valid. So what about your experiences of adaptation, or adaptations you've seen that you've not liked, or
that I've not liked? Well, most new things, I don't really watch new things anymore for that reason. Everything is an updated version of something, some old comic or some old movie or whatever. So, it's a good question. I will say that what you were just saying about War of the Worlds reminds me of a conversation I had when Bates Motel first came out, that series. It's a prequel series to the movie Psycho. But it's not. And my friend said, they should have said it. Psycho took place in 1960. This should have taken place in, the 30s with a teenage Norman Bates. And I disagreed. I thought adapting it to the modern day was a way better idea. Because, if you're doing a 30s period piece, there's a whole set of particulars that you're doing at the same time as you're trying to tell this thrilling, scary story. Now you're trying to recapture the 30s and the look of everything and the attitudes, or not, or you're doing modern attitudes in the 30s. To me, it was just the original Psycho was not a period piece. It was made in 1960. It was set in right around 1960, So I'm like, that's a character, to me, it was way better to bring it forward and do it now. Norman has a cell phone. Everyone has cell phones. It's modern high school. It's all this. But the bones of it are, so to speak, are the same as the original story. It still works as its own story. The ending is less memorable to me than the rest, but the series, the bulk of it was fantastic. I think they retell the Psycho story, maybe with a few things changed in the last season, but
okay.
But I liked that. I liked it a lot, and I love the movie Psycho, but I thought Bates Motel was really very successful.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I can see an argument for doing a 30s version, because then you're treating the original film as in the timeline.
Sure.
So then the series would have been leading up to that. So then you wouldn't actually show the events of the film. You might have shown the events happening around or outside of that story. Right.
I love the idea of doing the movie again in the show, actually. So I agree with you there. Yeah, I would have, if I was there involved in the show, I would have at least suggested, like, how about we not do that? Let's just end it, you know.
Yeah. There's so many different ways of approaching adaptations. Whether you treat the original text as sacrosanct and you try and repeat it, or at least work around it, or you just take it as influence and create something new. They're all valid approaches.
Oh, sure. It's different. You take it on case by case and you do what you have to do. Like, I really liked Zack Snyder's Watchmen movie. It was so slavishly faithful to the graphic novel. To me, it worked really well. And the fact that he said it, like, it was important, I think, that story, I don't know if you know Watchmen, but anyone out there, that it sort of ranged from the 50s or 60s through the Vietnam War and kind of ended in the 80s with the fears of nuclear war. Like, that story is very much a product of where it's set in American history. Like, you could do that story and change it all, but man, you'd have to change a lot, and I don't know how well it would work. I thought the changes they did make were great in the movie.
I liked the movie too. I thought it was like, I don't know the comic, but I thought the film was handled really well, and it was entertaining, clever. It hung together. It didn't rely on the fact that you needed to know the source material. Everything made sense in context. Mm-hmm. So it was a good film. The only thing that bothered me was the fact that it was such a huge story and it was so massively compressed.
Right.
Which is what you have to do in that kind of thing. Because, obviously a comic is told over many chapters, over many years. And a film tells you the whole thing in under 2 hours. So, or maybe 2 hours.
Yeah, before the modern kind of convention of turning these things into miniseries and stuff. And they're doing a Watchmen series, or did one. I haven't seen it. But...
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, I've heard about the Watchmen series. Well, they've done so many series. That's the thing now.
Yeah.
Okay, so the biggest thing, of course, of where we're talking about adaptations is Marvel. First, it was Star Wars.
What's that mean?
Now it is those two things. So Disney is the titan of adaptation. They adapt everything. Disney was founded on adapting copyright-free fairy tales back in the 1930s, whatever. And now they're adapting Star Wars into 7 million kind of different things. So Netflix wasn't the first people to do this, but they really sort of made their mark doing adaptations of certain things and series. And others did it before them, but they really made a success, and now Disney has taken it to the next level. So, with Star Wars, different versions, and now Marvel adapted across 7 million different movies, which is an incredible feat, really.
You could say that Disney adapts everything for a young or for all audiences, in a sense. Like, if Disney makes it, 9 times out of 10 is going to be the super sanitized version, to the point that it is completely converted into something else. And I'm thinking, for example, Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is really a bipolar movie, in my opinion. But you have a lot of changes, a lot of creative changes that were taken in the plot itself, and it's not just sanitized. The ending is completely different. The theme is completely different, and then you have the gargoyles as well, which is like a sad story in and of itself. But on the other hand, you have exploration of themes that aren't kid friendly within the movie. So you could say, is it an adaptation of the book, or are they adapting a mood more or less rather than the book itself? So because when I first saw it, I was super disappointed at everything. But now that I have seen it by fast forwarding through the gargoyle scenes, there is a lot of merit in this movie that it was buried under the whole kid friendly and happy meal friendly character.
Yeah.
But if you take that out, you have a very interesting adaptation. I wouldn't say that, like a very interesting reimagining, I would say, rather than an adaptation of this movie, of this book, of this plot, of this concept. Yeah.
Yes, Victor Hugo's original story has been adapted, quite a few times, as these things are. These out of copyright classics tend to be.
I've only seen it once, and it was, visually it's very strong. The visual style of it. I remember that much. It's been so long since I've seen it, but
I mean,
the real stuff was painful.
Yeah. But for example, if you take, it has one of the most nuanced, in my opinion, villains.
Oh yeah.
In Disney history, in general, and
Frollo.
Yeah, Frollo. Frollo is like he's even like a sexual predator in a sense, which is super risky for a Disney movie to have. Yeah. But he's in there sniffing Esmeralda's hair and stuff. So you have that, and on the other hand, you have this very sugary romance between Esmeralda and the Phoebus, whatever his name was, which is completely like it didn't happen that way in the book. But I don't think Disney would be able to go there.
Yeah. Disney has to do it their own way, and that's how they do things.
But that would you call that an adaptation? Because it has the characters and it has like a good percentage of the plot, but some very key points that drive the theme are changed. Would that be an adaptation? Yep. Or is it just an inspiration?
That's an adaptation. Yeah. It's just, there's many ways of doing adaptations, and that is one of them. I mean, one of my favorite adaptations of things, talking about Hunchback, is Oliver, if you've ever seen that. So that's an adaptation of the Charles Dickens.
Oh, the musical.
Yeah, it's Charles Dickens Oliver Twist. So that was originally adapted, I think, back in the 60s as a stage play. And the guy from Small Faces, I think, was in that. So that was pretty cool. So that was adapted as a stage play, and then it got quite successful, and they turned it into a movie. And it's a fantastic movie. People love it all over the world. But that is a completely different feel from the book. Book is quite a harrowing experience about poverty and degradation in Victorian London. And this is a movie.
It was not intended for children. And that's another thing that you have. Oh, wait a second, the cat is going to escape. One sec.
It's a movie that is quite joyous with these fantastically catchy songs. Like, food, glorious food.
Yeah.
About starvation rations. And it's just a beautiful song.
It is. And that's another thing. Like, I would easily see, like, for me, Oliver is a more legit adaptation than Hunchback of Notre Dame, because although they have taken out certain parts of the book that are super, super grim and gothic and dark and everything, they have kept the feel and the theme of the book in their own version and in their own way. Or, for example, take Les Miserables, the musical and the book. Again, you have some differences, not very many, but some differences, and you have songs about tragedy, basically social tragedy. So there's that. I find that these are adaptations rather than the other one is more likely inspired by the source material rather than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, there's different ways of looking at it. Yeah. But yeah, there are many ways of doing adaptations. We talked about before we even did any QUACKCAST. We talked about the 300 and how that's an adaptation of the Battle of Thermopylae, which is a famous story. It's a real event that happened, but it's also, we know it from a famous story, which is in its way, it's an adaptation of
an
a real
adaptation.
event. Yeah, exactly. So then we have this comic by Frank Miller, which is his own particular version of events, and then we have a movie version of that comic. So it's very derivative of this to that, to that, to that, and you lose things and things change in translation along the way, and then you have this movie, which is
It
its own
basically
thing.
becomes like, it feels a lot more like a Marvel movie rather than a historical anything. And honestly, that's how I watched 300 and enjoy it. But that made me remember, like, speaking of adaptations, Prince of Egypt is one of the most masterful, in my opinion, adaptations of the Bible story of the parting of the Red Sea and Moses. Yeah. And what is really, really good about it is that they have adapted it by shifting the scope of the story. Not, oh, look what God can do, which also, I mean, is part of the story and stuff. But it is a lot more in, look how two brothers that do love each other are being driven apart, and this love turns to hate, which is very human and very real. It happens in real life. And they don't really focus on that in the Bible, assuming that they do at all. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, you wonder
Whereas
if
in other
I was
adaptations,
just going to say, you wonder if that the Prince of Egypt was more based on the Hollywood movie version of the story of Moses, where it is more about the relationship between the Pharaoh and Moses. So maybe that's where they took inspiration. All right, go on.
definitely, I mean, you have, I think there are even sort of like nods to the Ten Commandments, which was the Hollywood super production of the 60s, I think, 60s, around there, that decade. And but that movie had the brothers as rivals, like they were feuding from the get-go. Whereas in Prison of Egypt, you have actually close-knit people that do support each other and do love each other and care for each other genuinely. And personally, I find that a lot more compelling. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a that is a cool way of doing adaptation. You take the story in a slightly different direction, examine it from different angles that you weren't able to do in the original, which is really, really fun and interesting. You give the audience something new to see. Like, could you imagine that adapted for present day? Like, if you took the adaptation in that angle. You did the
Oh, that would be
weird.
amazing. I think that it would go a lot more towards the way of Don't Look Up than you know standard. Oh, Moses has come. It would be like, oh, here is the tinfoil hat man and his chunky with the followers and stuff. So,
Well, there was a series on Netflix called, I think it was called Messiah. I'm not sure. And
yeah.
that was an interesting series about this guy who was like, people thinking like, is he some kind of Middle Eastern terrorist, or is he like the Messiah reborn? And it was like an adaptation of the Jesus story for the modern world. It was really, really well done. Like, is he the Messiah reborn, or is he like a terrorist? And everything was sort of recreated in the modern world. So that was really interesting. Oh, like and okay, I didn't. Did they do another series of that? I only saw the first series. Okay, yeah, it was anyway, it was a really interesting series, and people should watch that. Messiah, I think it's called. It was quite strange, quite heavy, quite serious, but it's a good way of adapting a Bible story which is, super context sensitive, and putting it in the current day, which you think would be rather unusual to do. You normally just adapt fantasy stories, Marvel stuff or whatever. Well, let's see. All the Marvel things are adapted to the current day, except for Captain America. Captain America is my favorite because it's like that character is super context-based, so you need that character to be based in the 1940s or it doesn't make sense. Which is what they did, and then they time travel him to the future by freezing him in the ice, which is fine.
Which has always been his story, but just the length of time he's frozen just grows and grows and grows.
Yeah, exactly.
As you adapt it. Instead of 20 years, it's now 75 years.
And yeah, you're able to have your cake and eat it too. So he is from the past and he's in the future as well. So he's in all those times. But he's the only character, well, I mean, there might be others, but most of the other characters from the Marvel movies they should have been from, I don't know, like the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s is when most of those characters began. But now they all begin in the 2000s. Which, like for Tony Stark, that really doesn't make that much sense, I think.
I think it works great. Really, the movie is very true to the comics as far as his origin story.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he has as much history as Captain America in a lot of ways. And
he does, but it's not as context.
Yeah, true. It's not based in the Second World War.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. You can move forward. It's like we were talking about Bates Motel. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, but I mean, obviously the movies do very well, and it kind of, in comics already, like these characters were not, in the 80s, these characters were not in their late 50s or getting that old, even though they started appearing as adults in the 60s. They just, everyone slides forward in time.
They shift them a bit.
Yeah. So like I remember reading one Hulk comic by Peter David, the writer who always has this fun meta slant to all of his writing. And Hulk's sometimes wife, sometimes girlfriend Betty are talking, and she's like, it seems like I've known Bruce for 40 years. It's only been a few years.
Yeah. People's timelines just bizarrely extend forever. That's something you have. That's an amazing achievement. Like the Marvel films are like the definition of like popcorn films, like hamburger, McDonald's sort of. They're junk food for the eyes and ears. But it's an amazing achievement to adapt something that huge for cinema. Comics are massive, taking place over a 70-year span, something like this, like an enormous period of time. There's so much material there, and all these characters have their complicated, ridiculous interactions, and they're adapting it to a cinematic universe, and in TV series as well. It's an amazing achievement, which shouldn't be overlooked. Really, it's just
Oh
how
no!
do you do
Well,
that?
they definitely have been successful. I don't know how long. I don't know if it's run its course or not or what. But, what they've done definitely, yeah, it's been amazing.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. So kudos to them for that, and whatever
Well
their
done.
attractors think.
Oh yeah, Tans mentions Cobra Kai.
Now, Cobra Kai is interesting. So, the first I ever heard of that idea, I think, was Patton Oswalt sort of mentioning he would. I think, this might be a false memory, but I think I heard him say, "Oh, wouldn't it be interesting to see like the story from the other guy's perspective, and just talk about what happens to the bad guys in that film." Like, I would like to see an updated version of that. And then you have the series magically came out. I think it was like on Apple TV or YouTube or something like that. Like YouTube,
Well,
it was a Google thing, yeah.
Yeah, on YouTube, and now it's on Netflix. But it's great, and yeah, what a successful adaptation, man! To have those same characters now. They're about 50, I guess, and to sort of tell their story now and start from the villain's point of view, like Tans was writing. Awesome, man. Yeah, I haven't seen the new season, but I'm sure it's great. The show is great.
Yeah, so in that, they're treating the original film as real. So that's set in time.
They're treating every film in the Karate Kid series as canon. So, like 1, 2, 3, and I guess there's another one without Ralph Macchio. Yeah, that's all. Like, they touch on things from all. I haven't even seen all those movies myself, but I just know from the show that they're touching on characters and stories that took place in all the movies, and it's all treated as canon, which is, man, that's
even
really
the Will
cool.
Smith's Jaden Smith one, you mean?
That one maybe not. That was more of a remake, I think. So I'm not sure about that one, but everything else, I believe. I think it was Hilary Swank in the new Karate Kid or whatever. But the Jaden Smith one maybe not. But yeah, other than that,
a bridge too far.
I've never seen that either, so I don't know what the reason is. But who knows? Maybe Jackie Chan will show up. Jaden Smith will show up. Who knows?
Yeah. Karate is not something that was practiced in China. So yeah, the Jaden Smith version is like they're doing wushu, I think, in that film. So it's
okay, that's a different.
Yeah, that's a thing where you adaptation is sort of based on some Hollywood guy's idea, Hollywood money. That's what it's based around, and a spoiled child who needs to be.
Honestly, though, I don't think Jaden Smith can act, but Karate Kid with Jackie Chan, I think, is really, really good and stands alone. It's not like it's an adaptation of the feeling of the theme, the mood, and general approach of Karate Kid as a coming of age story, where the coming of age is done through martial arts, and I think it has its own style. It shouldn't be compared because it tackles different things in different contexts while adapting the same situations. Like you have the kid that has migrated, you have the teacher of martial arts that has his trauma, but it's completely different because Miyagi had World War II trauma, and the other guy, Jackie Chan's character, has personal guilt from feeling responsible for the death of his family. So they tackle completely different issues. They just have the slots, kid migrated, traumatized teacher, love interest, mom, martial arts. That's it. And then they create something completely different. And I really like it. I like both. Like I like the original, of course, and I also like that. And I think Jaden works really well in that. Probably because he is a kid with a father figure, and that lends itself well to any kid. So.
Yeah.
Right.
And something I wanted to talk about before we finished the QUACKCAST was the Rescue Rangers movie. It's a new film. I was talking to you guys before about that. So yeah, Rescue Rangers advertised a lot online on Disney Plus. And Rescue Rangers back in the 90s was a Disney cartoon about Chip and Dale, two chipmunks, and the little adventures they would have, and like their little detective agency, and go around solving problems. And it's a pretty fun cartoon. Had a quite a little run. And now they're making a big screen movie about it with Andy Samberg and Jeff Mulaney as the voices, and you're thinking, oh god, this will be weird. How are they going to do this? So in this kind of adaptation, instead of doing like a continuation story or a remake of the story like is done, they did a parody of big screen movies made of 90s of old cartoons. So this is a parody of Adaptation, so it's very meta in that regard, and it has all sorts of characters who come in and have little cameos who are cartoon characters from the same era, or that were popular at one stage. I think there's He-Man and Skeletor also show up, but the characters show up as themselves, as in, okay, so this show from the 90s was not something that really happened. It was just a TV show, and these guys were actors in it. And now we're 30 years on, and these actors are now out of work doing different things, and they're getting back together and solving these crimes or whatever that they have to solve in order to survive. But it's a completely different way of handling adaptation, turning going on with the same characters, but turning the characters into something else, treating the episodes as canon, but canon in a different way. So they didn't actually happen. They happened as a TV show that these characters starred in. So it's quite a creative way of doing it. And, using parody at the same time, so they can have cameos of all these different cartoons. They've got Ugly Sonic in there, the Sonic with the bad teeth. They had the whole internet rage about that Sonic, so he gets a cameo in there. Several other characters. Lots of references to various things, Polar Express, all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of little Easter eggs in there. It's very good. So this is an excellent thing to talk about, adaptation, and going in different directions with it, and all the different ways you can approach it. You don't have to just straight update things. Or
I thought of a bizarre one. I'm sorry to interrupt. But just before we end here, before we run out of time, there was a Twitter channel. Is it called a channel? I don't. Whatever. Anyway, I can just barely understand this because I'm an old elderly person. But shit, my dad says was like a Twitter thing for a while, and this guy would type up this like, hilarious stuff that his old father would say, his elderly father, who was brilliant and funny and like cantankerous and would say all this stuff. That Twitter user, what is it called, Tans? A Twitter channel? A Twitter whatever? Whatever. Anyway, that Twitter account, was turned into a sitcom account. Okay, turned into a CBS sitcom with William Shatner called Shit My Dad Says. It did not work, apparently. I think it got canceled pretty quickly, but that was hilarious that a Twitter account could be adapted like into a network sitcom.
Oh, it's insane. It is insane.
I'd throw that in. Yeah. Anything.
They will adapt anything, especially now. Yeah, you could have, like you said, like characters adapted into running shoes, or running shoes adapted into a thing. You had a movie of a game, Battleship, adapted into a movie, which I thought was a complete piece of shit, but a lot of people love it. So there you go.
Cool.
There's
What if they start adapting like Happy Meal like combos into movies? Like it goes in reverse. Like sandwiches are now being turned into shows and movies.
Yeah, that is quite possible in this day and age. That could happen. Like, we had Bad Sonic, an internet rage of a concept art turned into a real character in a movie. So a failed character.
So it's either sliding or it's like the end of times. I'm not sure which.
This is the start of everything. It's a new it's a new world. It's
a
a whole new world. Which, like, there we are. Aladdin is a bizarre adaptation of the Aladdin story. The 1001 Arabian Nights story from the book is like a crazy adaptation, but people love it, and that is like treated as the definitive version to so many people. It's just bizarre to me. Robin Williams is a crazy genie. The genie's not friendly in Aladdin.
Yeah, and
I mentioned the emojis. I just saw what she wrote, the emojis movie. So it's like everything.
A movie that should never have been made, but it was made. So.
Emojis, I don't know that one.
The Emoji Movie.
I know the Pixels.
Well,
that was quite weird.
That was a different one of the same caliber. Maybe Pixels was a little better. I don't know. But yeah, the Emoji Movie is literally, it takes place in a smartphone, and it's all about emojis that are anthropomorphized.
They should have a movie just throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks, but literally do it as a movie. Because that's where it's going. That's the ultimate adaptation.
So it is the apocalypse.
Well, yeah. There you go. Everything's ended. Everything's crap and horrible.
Why am I trying to end this on such a dour note? I don't know.
No. There's a lot of good stuff. Yeah, the Rescue Rangers film isn't the best thing ever, but I liked it. And, adaptations that go in a different way can be good.
Yeah, for example, Journey to the West, really quickly, is something that has been adapted 1,000 times, each time with something to offer. So
Monkey Magic is the best version. If you don't know that one, you're a dick. Bye.